Of Training Tuesday. So lots of twos today, February 22nd, 2022. When we started doing these Training Tuesdays, 3 years ago, we circled this one on the calendar. We're like, this one is going to be a good one. 2222222. So what we're going to talk about today. A couple of quick job aid updates very quickly, and really the bulk of the time today we'll be handing over to some special guest speakers from the Unified Procurement Program team, or UP. So that is going to be the big bulk of everything today. We're always excited whenever we can have experts come on our Training Tuesday and share their expertise. So without delay, let's jump in really quickly, just touch on a couple of these job aid updates before we pass it over to Cassandra Wilkin and the UP team. So the contract change order job aid, we removed the PPB questions from the attachments. We did get confirmation from PPB that those questions will only be required for renewals over $250,000 and no longer required for change orders over $250,000. So very specific. We do have a new version that's 22.3. As always, this is your weekly reminder to go out and always use the most updated job aids there. We always talk about the changes on our Training Tuesday, but if that slips through the cracks, make sure that you just go and make sure you're using the most updated version. Okay, so no PPB questions are required for change orders over $250,000. Or $250,000 and above. Technically, it's $249,999. The second update, we added the email to the Auditor General to the emergency publish final cost job aid. So that's going to be a version number 22.1. The email to the Auditor General is already on the attachments tab for the emergency job aid. But if you're doing an estimated cost for your emergency, you do need to go back and publish the final cost once that's known. And then that updated final cost also goes to the Auditor General, which would need to be a part of that procurement file. Okay? All right, so very quickly, right? There wasn't much to that. We're gonna pass this over to our UP team. We have our senior SPO as well as let me make sure I think I might have missed a question here. SPOs are responsible for sending to Auditor General. Correct. Yes, but that email just needs to be as a part of the procurement file. So that's what we added to the job aid. Yep, you're correct. All right, so I'm going to pass over the ball over to Cassandra Wilkin. She's on the UP team as well as a senior state purchasing officer. Also on the call, we'll have other members of the UP team, Sandy Robinson, Joe Kim, and Yarvo Roberts. A lot of times with our Unified Procurement Program questions, you may not actually have a question until you get to that point. So Cassandra is going to walk through some slides for you. They'll be made available as a part of the follow-up email. We'll also post them, as well as, of course, this is being recorded. So I'm going to pass it over to Senior SPO Cassandra Wilkin. I'm going to make you a presenter real quick, and off you'll go. Okay, Cassandra, you should have the ball now, and you can go ahead and present. Everybody, Cassandra Wilkin.
Let's see. Sorry, trying to get it going. All right. Good morning, everyone. Today, we're going to discuss the ROMAMC process as well as the piggyback and participation process. I will ask that if you have any questions during the presentation, that you ask it in the chat box. Sandy will be monitoring these questions, and at the end of the presentation, we will answer all of the questions in this box, along with any additional questions you may have. So with that, let's get started. What is a multiple award master contract? Multiple award contracts are not like other joint purchasing contracts with only one vendor. In cooperative purchasing, the cooperatives award a contract to multiple vendors for the same or substantially similar supplies or services. Because multiple vendors have a contract that may meet an agency's need, a process to determine the lowest cost vendor that meets the agency's need was necessary. If the release of multiple award process is not followed, the procurement can be voidable. So it's important to make sure the process is followed. We have tried to make it a little easier to distinguish multiple award master contracts. There are now 3 indicators on each PO and bid buy. You can see these on the examples here. On the General tab, in the short description, we added MA to JPMC to indicate it as a multiple award. We added it to the contact instructions. We also added it to the description on the contract on the attachments page. We currently have the mill equipment and the cloud solutions that are multiple award. Cloud solutions is a range of primarily web-based IT solutions or services. As we add new contracts that are multiple award, they will be updated so they're easily recognizable. When you decide to use the request of multiple award master contract, you want to involve the SPO early in the process because SPO determination that comes later in the process can be hindered. For instance, if there's brand name specifications that are used inappropriately. If an agency does use brand name specifications, the standard in 44 Illinois Administration Code 1.2050 will be the guidance the SPO consult in making a determination. Once the specifications have been developed and using the multiple award master contract request for quote template, the agency will email all the vendors that may meet the need. When we state specifications, we simply mean a document that lets the vendors know what you need. It could be a part number or the services you require. It's nothing that has to be lengthy, just to let them know what you need. Based on the complexity of the agency's need, you should allow adequate time for the vendors to respond. As a rule of thumb, agencies should allow no fewer than 3 days. The agency will need to evaluate all of the responses it receives and should recommend a vendor based on low price. Once the evaluation process is finished, the agency will need to complete the request to release off multiple award master contract form, and the SPO will make a determination that the vendor selection is based upon the lowest price or cost. After the determination is made, you will then complete the bid buy process using the job aid. I want to point out as part of the process, the agency will need to save the email quote that went out to all vendors and each of the vendors' responses as a PDF. All of these emails will need to be attached in bid buy on the requisition. I have posted some of those links here for you. It'll take you to the process manual and the forms that you need. A couple things to remember. When you're developing the RFQ specifications, this should be from publicly available information and sources. An agency should not communicate with any vendors before or during the development of these specifications. If you find you need assistance in developing your specifications, you should contact your SPO. Failure to follow the ROMAMC process and guidelines could result in vendors being determined to be prohibited from the selection, the disapproval of the ROMAMC request, or the orders being voided. The Governmental Joint Purchasing Act the purchases allowed under the Joint Purchasing Act are different from procurements pursuant to the code. There's a completely different statute, different methods, and different processes. We currently have 15 vetted and approved cooperatives for use on our website. In order to proceed with a participation or piggyback purchase, it must be from an approved cooperative. If you find a contract from a cooperative that has not been vetted and approved, the request to vet and approve needs to be provided to the UP team before any process can begin. You always want to consider a competitive procurement first. The program is not to replace the competitive procurement process, but should be thought of more like another tool for us to use. One example I can give you is where an agency was able to utilize a piggyback instead of declaring an emergency. If you are considering a piggyback or participation contract, it is important to involve your SPO early. They will need to sign off on the process, and it can help save time to know that it is a viable option before you use too much of your time. When we piggyback off of a contract, we're using a contract that has already been procured. These contracts have been procured using a competitive method. However, the state of Illinois had no involvement in the process. Our terms and conditions were not considered in the initial solicitation. To utilize this process, the agency must complete a piggyback purchase request form. It will need to be signed by the agency director, SPO, a member of the UP team, and the CPO before utilizing. BEP participation should be evaluated and encouraged if it applies. If there should be a goal on the contract, we need to encourage the vendor to accept the goal. On a piggyback purchase, if the vendor refuses the goal or only accepts part of the goal, we could document this and still move on. Piggyback purchases are limited to 1 year terms with very little exceptions. Any exception request would need to be asked through the SPO. There are 2 job aids, one for agency use and the other for joint purchase master contract. So when you pull them up, please be sure to follow the correct one. For cooperative led participation, the state is involved at the solicitation and posting stage. The state's terms and conditions are considered during the solicitation. The UP team posts the solicitation and bid buy, so Illinois vendors are notified and have a chance to participate in the opportunity. To utilize this process, the agency must complete a cooperative purchase request for state participant form. It will need to be signed by the APO, the SPO, and CPO before utilizing. BEP participation must be evaluated and applied as appropriate. If there should be a goal on the contract, the awarded vendor must complete a U plan or complete a good faith effort. For participation contract, if a vendor refuses the goal or does not complete a good faith effort, we're unable to move on with the participation process. Participation purchases may match the length of the resulting contract term. For example, if the cooperative contract was awarded through June 30th, 2025, you can only utilize any dates during this time. Like piggyback purchases, there are 2 job aids and bid buy, one for agency use and the other for joint purchase master contract. Again, please be sure to follow the correct one. Here are a couple things to remember. A key difference between the 2 methods is piggybacks are limited to 1 year. Participations may match the cooperative term. This is because piggyback purchases are the least transparent of the methods, and it does not consider the state's terms and conditions during the solicitation like a participation purchase would. BEP goals are encouraged in piggyback purchases where it is a requirement of participation purchases. Again, in a participation, if the vendor refused, we would not be able to move on, unlike piggybacks. All cooperatives must be approved and listed on the web page to utilize them. If they're not on this page, you need to contact the UP team before any process can begin. The vendors that we use must be registered and active in IPG. And until that's done, we cannot move forward with the process. If it is a small business set aside, we will need the waiver, or if there's a brand name only, we need this form. When considering either of these methods, we do ask that you involve your SPO early so we can ensure a successful procurement. All right. The piggyback request form and the cooperative purchase request form are very similar, so I'm just going to do a short review of this cooperative purchase request form here instead of doing both. These forms should be completed by the agency and submitted to the SPO. The SPO will sign and forward on to the next for the next signatures. On the participation form, we're not only asking for the agency rec number, but we're also asking for the requisition and bid number for the posting of the participation solicitation and bid buy. So where the CPO GS posts those are the numbers we're going to be seeking. We're also seeking information regarding the type of solicitation, such as if it was an invitation for bid or request for proposal, how many vendors responded, how many were awarded. We want to know the contract start and end dates, as well as any renewal information. Please make sure you research this information and complete it accurately. If this form is incorrect, we will send it back for the corrections, and it can slow the process. The form asks why the cooperative chose this vendor. Most times this is indicated on the cooperative's website, and you use the information they provide to complete this question. Provide your description of the supplies and services the agency requires. Your SPO will make sure the contract covers your request. If there's scope creep or if the supplies or services are not covered under the contract, the request will not be approved. Agencies are permitted to utilize the please enter the permitted contract user here. So if it is a single agency, you would list your agency. If there are multiple agencies, for instance, if it's a joint purchase master contracts, we ask that you enter all the agencies here. We need to know who the users are before this can be approved. We ask that the contract term or what your contract term will be, so we make sure it meets the requirements. So like when we talked about piggybacks being 1 year, it would have to be this, or if it's a longer term, we have to make sure the cooperative participation term doesn't exceed that. We ask for an estimated value of the contract. One thing I would like to point out is that once your agency request is approved, you will have to go back through the process if additional funding is needed. So you may want to estimate this a little higher to make sure all your needs are covered. We asked for a brief description on how it was determined the price was competitive in the market. We do not want to see that because it was an IFB, it was competitive. We need to see a little more detail on how the agency determined the price was competitive. So what market research was done? Is there historical information that can support your price? Perhaps you've purchased the same supplies and services before, and now you're receiving a 20% discount. This could be part of the justification. So we just ask that you make sure it's complete and you are doing a proper research for this. For participation purchase, we ask, why did the agency choose this vendor? And we are seeking your reasoning for choosing this vendor. We do not ask about the cooperative because we know you are using the cooperative because we participated in the solicitation and you're able to seek a longer term. However, on a piggyback request, we do ask the agency to why did they choose this cooperative and this vendor? It is a two-part question. We often see where agencies fail to answer both, and we have to send it back to have this completed. I stated earlier, the vendor must be registered in IPG. So this box should be checked and the IPG number added to the form. So you also want to mark and attach the contract and any other forms that are applicable when you send it for signatures. Remember, on the participation request, BEP evaluation is required. This portion of the form needs to be completed accordingly. If there should be a goal and one is not included, or if there's a goal and the U plan or good faith effort is not attached, your form will be returned. On the piggyback request, if there should be a goal and the agency did not encourage the vendor to accept it, the form will also be returned until the step is completed. The vendor's refusal or acceptance, even if it's partial, should be documented. And if they do accept the goal, a U plan should be completed. All right, at this time, I would like to check in with Sandy or Dave to see if there were any questions that came in that could be answered, and also allow any other questions that you may have.
I believe that we did get to answer all the questions that popped up in the chat box. Actually, a couple more just came in, and we'll get to all of them. But I can rewind and go back through the questions and the answers so that they're part of the record and the recording. First question was, how does the agency determine which vendors will meet the need? And the answer is that the rule of thumb is to send your RFQ to all of the awarded vendors to ensure that no one that could meet the need has been missed. And so in the case of our cloud solutions contract, that's about 6 or 7 vendors. It's not an overly arduous task. And so the rule of thumb is just send it to all of the vendors that have that designation of having an award. And then we said the next question was, for the ROMAMC, we're only allowed to solicit what's in the published price list attached to the master and bid buy, correct? Otherwise, we would have to utilize the cooperative purchase agreement. And the answer is that, yes, that was correct. You would need to do a participation or a piggyback request if something that you need is not outlined in one of those awarded contracts. Next question we had was, when I look for services to purchase from a cooperative, It is difficult to know who sells what. How do we know which vendors should receive an RFQ? I assume from the question that since we're talking about an RFQ, we're probably talking about a release off of a multiple award master process. And the same answer from earlier applies. You should send it to all of the vendors that are awarded under that contract to make sure that no one is missed. And if we're talking about cooperative contracts in general, then there generally is a pricing list attached in most cooperatives that outline what's available from each contract and from each vendor. I had the next question that said the current JPMC MA for mailroom equipment ends on May the 14th. I just lost my place in the chat, sorry. Ends on 5/14. Will a new agreement be in place prior to the current contracts ending to avoid a lapse in services? And the answer to that is that UP is currently working to have a solution in place. What that is, we will have to announce at a later time on probably one of these Training Tuesdays. And then the questions that I did not get a chance to answer in the chat as yet, the next one says, what about when there is federal funding, so no BEP goal? The same rules for BEP, whatever's in place in other instances, would apply. So if there is an exception that is allowed in other instances, then that would be the same exception in these cases. And where is the CPO approved cooperatives located? That is on the UP page, and we can probably put a link into this presentation to make sure that everyone can find that. But there is a cooperatives list that are approved for use by state agencies on the UP page.
And there is a link in this presentation.
There we go. And then we have the last question that in the chat says, are we only allowed to do a one-year contract term? I'm not sure because the question is not terribly specific. There is a one-year limitation on piggybacks. And so that is the one that has a one-year limitation. If it is a participation, something that we advertised in advance of the solicitation being awarded per our 14-day rule, et cetera, then you can utilize the entire awarded contract term via the cooperative. So that's the difference between the piggyback and the participation. And as it relates to releases, whatever is available in the contract is available because those contracts are already awarded. And Crystal said, yes, I meant piggyback. Perfect. Okay, I think we got it. Back to you, Dave and Cassandra.
All right, thanks a lot, Sandy. And I did just show real quickly that, like Cassandra said, the link is specifically in the slides, but if you go to CPOGS website, so going back to the consortiums and cooperatives that are approved for use, CPOGS website, clicked on Unified Procurement Program at the bottom, and then on that page, there's a cooperatives and consortiums approved for use, and there's the list with links for each one of them. Currently, there are 15 approved, and like Cassandra said, there are other consortiums and cooperatives that are out there. They just need to be approved. These are the ones that are currently approved. If you do come across one that's not on this list, that doesn't mean that they wouldn't be potentially available for use. It just means that they need to be properly vetted by the UP team. And then, as always, when you have questions, not if, when you have questions regarding this, reach out to your SPO first, and then they can elevate that to the UP team, and we can get all those questions answered. This will be recorded, or is being recorded, and will be posted. Yeah, go ahead, Sandy.
I just had one clarification as well. Currently, the UP cooperative list is frozen as is, and so we're not vetting and adding any new cooperatives at this present time. When the CPO gives us a release for that, then that's when we'll be doing another round of vetting and adding of consortium. So the best rule of thumb is to stick with the list as it currently is, because right now we're not adding any new cooperatives.
All right, there you go. And that's why we have the experts on these Training Tuesdays, folks. Get the most updated information. Thanks, Sandy. Okay. Oh, looks like we might have another one popping in here. Sandy, you want to take a look at that?
Sometimes it can just be the question is, you mentioned the use of cooperative contracts eliminated the need for an emergency. How can we know what is available? In the case of an emergency, we usually need to move quickly and do not have time to research. How will we know what's out there? Sometimes it's just a quick search of what you need, you could search in some of these cooperative Sourcewell, NASPO, and put in something similar to what you're looking for, and it can come up. Um, and then just research that contract if it's there. It doesn't take a lot of additional work to kind of see, or if it isn't an emergency case where you're trying to move quickly, sometimes we know of existing contracts and may be able to help. Can't guarantee it. So if you reach out to your SPO or the UP team, sometimes we may know of something that may be out there. But the cooperatives that we participate, all of them, NASPO, Sourcewell, and Omnia, and MCAP. NASPO, Sourcewell, and Omnia are some of our biggest ones. So I would also mention maybe looking at those ones first to see what's out there. Sandy, do you have anything to add to that?
Nope, that pretty well covers it. It's just sometimes in the right circumstances, we can process a cooperative purchase in a fairly quick fashion and eliminate the need for an agency to have to declare an emergency. So that was that point of the presentation. Not always, but sometimes it works.
Okay, if anybody has additional questions, please reach out to your SPO and we'll make sure we get those answered. Big thanks to Cassandra Wilkin and Sandy Robinson from the UP team for being on the call and donating your time. We appreciate you. I just have one other thing. So, you guys know that I love a good motivational quote, but wasn't really feeling it today. So we did a quip of the day. My wife says I only have two faults: I don't listen and something else. So everybody have a great rest of your week. Big thanks to Cassandra and Sandy, and we'll talk soon. Have a great rest of your week. And the recordings and slides will be posted shortly and sent out to everybody on the call. Thank you so much.